Let me tell you something that most older men need to hear, and almost nobody says directly. The age gap is not what creates distance between older men and younger women. The habits are. Specifically, 7 behavioral patterns that older men fall into, not out of bad character, but out of conditioning, comfort, and the kind of unconscious autopilot that develops when nobody has given you honest feedback in a very long time. These habits don't just reduce attraction. They actively communicate things that contradict every genuinely compelling quality that older men naturally possess. They undermine the depth, the stability, the earned confidence that younger women are actually drawn to, and replace it with something that feels, from her perspective, like a version of the man she was hoping to find buried underneath behavior he never examined. Today we examine it, honestly and completely. Here is the quiet frustration this creates. You sense that something isn't landing the way it should, that conversations that start well seem to hit a ceiling, that the connection you feel building gets interrupted by something you can't quite identify, a shift in her energy, a subtle pulling back, a warmth that was present and then without obvious reason became less available, and you don't know what changed. Because nothing dramatic happened. Nobody said anything that ended things. It just slowly, quietly became something less than it was beginning to be. Most of the time, it was one of these 7 habits, operating below your conscious awareness, communicating something you didn't intend, costing you something you didn't know you were spending. Today, we make it conscious. And conscious is always the beginning of different. This is the habit that does the most damage, and it operates in 2 opposite directions that produce the same result. The first version is using age as a shield, referencing your experience in ways that subtly position you as knowing more, having seen more, being further along than her, in ways that don't invite her into a conversation but close one down. When you get to my age, you'll understand. That sentence, and every sentence like it, communicates condescension dressed as wisdom. The second version is using age as an apology, prefacing things with self-deprecating references to being older, as if your years are something to be excused rather than simply inhabited. This communicates the same insecurity as the first version, just pointed inward rather than outward. What younger women are actually drawn to is a man who is simply quietly at ease with how old he is, who neither weaponizes his experience nor apologizes for his timeline, who exists in his age the way a genuinely confident person exists in their own skin, without commentary. Drop both versions. Be your age without making it a topic. Older men often develop a deep, genuine impulse to share what they've learned. And that impulse, when channeled correctly, is one of their most attractive qualities. When channeled incorrectly, it becomes one of the most repelling. The difference is consent. Wisdom offered when someone has asked for it lands as generosity. Wisdom offered when someone was simply sharing their experience lands as correction. When she tells you about something she's navigating and you immediately move into solution mode, offering the lesson, reframing the situation, explaining what she should do, her nervous system registers something specific. He wasn't listening to me. He was waiting to teach me. That experience, repeated enough times, creates a dynamic that feels more like mentorship than partnership. And a younger woman who is genuinely drawn to an older man does not want a mentor. She wants an equal, one who happens to have more experience, but who uses that experience to understand her better rather than to instruct her. Listen first, always. Advice second, and only when invited. This habit is subtle enough that most men who do it don't realize they're doing it, and damaging enough that the women on the receiving end feel it immediately. When the focus of your attention and compliments centers primarily on her age, her energy, her vitality, when what you find most remarkable about her is the fact that she is young, you communicate something that fundamentally undermines the connection you're hoping to build. You communicate that she is valued for a circumstance rather than a character, that what drew you to her is something she will inevitably lose. and that your interest is indexed to something temporary rather than something essential. Younger women who are genuinely drawn to older men are drawn to depth, to stability, to the specific quality of being truly seen by someone with enough life experience to see clearly. When the man they're drawn to turns around and reduces them to their youth, the disappointment is specific and significant. See her mind, her particular way of thinking, her specific humor and her specific courage, and the specific things that make her her rather than simply young. That is what creates lasting attraction, not the appreciation of her age, the appreciation of her person. There is a meaningful difference between a man who has genuine values and a man who has calcified preferences, and younger women, who are still in the process of forming their own worldview, feel that difference acutely. Genuine values are principles that guide behavior. They are flexible in application, consistent in essence, and always in service of something larger than personal comfort. Calcified preferences are opinions that have hardened into rules. They resist new information. They treat unfamiliarity as threat. They close conversations rather than opening them. When an older man encounters something outside his established framework, a perspective he hasn't considered, a way of doing things he hasn't tried, a cultural reference he doesn't share, and responds with dismissal rather than curiosity, he communicates something that contradicts everything genuinely attractive about being older. Wisdom is not the accumulation of firm opinions. It is the development of the capacity to engage with what you don't yet understand. Stay curious. Let her world be interesting to you rather than foreign. This habit develops so gradually that most men don't notice it happening, but it creates a specific kind of disconnection that younger women find genuinely draining. When conversation consistently gravitates toward what you did, who you were, what things were like before, when your primary mode of engaging is retrospective, you communicate something about your relationship with your own present life. You communicate that the most interesting version of you already happened, that the chapters worth reading are behind you, and for a younger woman who is in the middle of her most formative years, who is living in the present with her attention genuinely forward-facing, spending time with someone whose energy is primarily backward-facing creates a subtle but persistent mismatch. Your past is genuinely interesting. Your present is what makes you someone worth being present with. Talk about what you're building now, what excites you currently, what you're still figuring out, what you're moving toward. The man whose life is still actively happening is always more compelling than the man whose best stories are already behind him. This is perhaps the most psychologically costly habit on this list, and the one most deeply rooted in generational conditioning. Many older men were raised in environments where emotional expressiveness in men was either discouraged or actively penalized, where strength meant not showing what you felt, where vulnerability was weakness and composure meant silence. That conditioning produced men who are genuinely capable of deep feeling, but genuinely limited in their ability to express it. And for a younger woman who has grown up in a generation that values emotional intelligence and genuine connection, that limitation doesn't read as strength. It reads as distance, as unavailability, as the specific loneliness of being with someone who is present physically but absent emotionally. This doesn't require becoming someone you're not. It requires beginning, slowly, imperfectly, but genuinely, to name what you feel. To say, this matters to me when something matters. To let her see that you have an interior life and that she has access to it. That access, offered carefully but genuinely, is one of the most connecting things an older man can give a younger woman. And withholding it, however unconsciously, is one of the most distancing. This final habit is the one that most directly undermines the very thing that makes older men genuinely attractive. And it almost always comes from a place of insecurity rather than intention. When an older man begins trying to be more like the younger men in her world, adopting language that doesn't come naturally, trying to match energy that isn't his, positioning himself as younger or more current than he actually is, he loses the one thing she was actually drawn to, his genuine self. Younger women who desire older men are not looking for a younger man in an older body. They are looking for exactly what genuine age produces: depth, settledness, self-knowledge, the particular quality of someone who has been through enough to be real. When an older man performs youth, he abandons all of that for a counterfeit that nobody is actually seeking. Be more yourself, not less. The competition you win with a younger woman who values what you genuinely have is not the competition to seem younger. It is the competition to be most fully, most honestly, most completely you. That version of you, lived out without apology and without performance, is what nobody else can offer her. Here is the thread running through every single habit on this list. Each one is a form of being less than fully yourself. Through apology, through performance, through emotional withholding, through the backward gaze of someone who hasn't yet claimed the present version of who they are. And the correction for every single one is the same. Be more genuinely, completely, honestly yourself. Not the managed version, not the apologetic version, not the version performing youth or hiding feeling or teaching when she needed to be heard. The actual version, experienced, grounded, emotionally present, genuinely curious, fully alive in his own current life. That version of you is what younger women who are drawn to older men are actually hoping to find. Stop the habits that hide him. Let that man show up. If today gave you something honest and useful, subscribe. Every week we go this deep into attraction, psychology, and what genuine connection actually requires at every stage of life. I'll see you in the next one. Show up as yourself. It is always enough.